Hey guys, tonight we shuffle straight into the cold hush before sunrise, slipping inside the patched-up boots of a medieval peasant who's already late before the day even begins. The rooster hasn't finished his first crow, yet frost needles through the wattle walls, and the thatch above your straw mattress whispers with every icy drip. You probably won't survive this schedule, but that's tomorrow's problem. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Post your city and local time in the comments. I love seeing the map light up. Now dim the lights, maybe fluff your pillows, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake in darkness thick enough to feel. The cottage smells of damp wool, wood smoke, and a hint of turnip stew. Your breath puffs like a tiny steam engine. You tug on the scratchy hemp shirt you slept in, unlacing it only long enough to flick away straw. Hose, cap, rough-spun hood, each layer adds another timid inch between skin and winter. A rooster's cracked cry orders the village to life. The floor groans as you rise, straw crunches, a mouse darts off with a crumb it probably rents from you. At the hearth, last night's embers blink like tired fireflies. You breathe, add twigs, and watch flames catch, painting wattle walls with jittery gold. Your mother stirs. Your little brother curls tighter around a wooden doll carved from herb-scented scrap. A blackened pot waits by the hearth, crusted with barley porridge. You break the skin, pour in a splash from the bucket, and set it to warm. Breakfast is fuel, not flavour, but you hum a tune your father whistled mending fence posts. The melody keeps fingers moving and the mind from sulking. The room's inventory spans 3 glances, a splintered table holding 2 spoons, a shelf with a wooden cross, and last spring's cracked eggshell keepsake, and a tool rack displaying rake, hoe, and spade as proudly as any castle's armory. Did you know? Most peasants counted their tools just after prayer each night, because losing a hoe could cost an entire season's profit. Fire stoked, you duck outside into air that bites like vinegar. The lane is churned mud frozen into ridges. Every breath fogs upward toward rafters of dark cloud. At the well, the rope groans, iron meets ice water, and the bucket's clang echoes off shuttered cottages. You splash a handful across your face, instant regret, instant revival. Back inside, steam curls from the porridge. Mother ladles portions. Your sister ties her cap with studied precision. You swallow a too-hot mouthful that scalds the tongue yet somehow warms the chest. No one talks. Words cost energy. You sling rake and spade across your shoulder, cinch a fraying rope belt and touch the oak lintel, polished by generations. A whispered Latin plea slips between cracked lips. Daily bread, bearable steward, rain in due measure. East sky bruises from coal to pewter. Silent cottages huddle like old women, roofs sagging under decades of taxation. Frost etches spiderweb lace along the dung heap where the rooster now struts, feathers puffed in pompous triumph. You salute him. At least someone in this village never doubts his purpose. Beyond the byre, sheep blur into fog. Farther off, the Lord's stone manor squats on higher ground, chimney issuing confident ribbons of smoke that smell of richer firewood and richer soup. You wonder if nobles ever tire of comfort. Probably not. A church bell tests its voice in the distance, a single toll to remind the world that time belongs to God, even if the reeve collects interest. Sounds amplify in half-light, ice cracking under clogs, your own heartbeat, a magpie wing flutter overhead. The field gate appears. You unlatch it with numb fingers and step onto the strip family hands have worked for centuries. Soil is hard as fired clay. Frost will soften once sun climbs. You drive the spade into stubborn earth, elbows jolting. Breath clouds rhythmically. You plan the day. Loosen clods, clear stones, avoid the steward's disapproving eye. Before heading out, you pause long enough to bind your cracked hands with strips of linen coated in bacon grease, a village hack to keep skin from splitting in the wind. The smell makes your stomach growl, but grease is cheaper than doctoring. You tuck a sliver of hard cheese into your pouch, not for now, but for that mid-morning moment when muscle tremble threatens revolt. Every peasant you know guards some small comfort, a lucky hazelnut, a polished pebble, a joke ready to sling at gloom. Dawn finally tears the veil. Pale gold pours across hedgerows and furrows, revealing every promise of backache to come. Yet beauty hides here too, light catching frozen cobwebs, a deer silhouette along the wood's edge, unseen songbirds tuning for matins. For a moment you forget taxes and toil and simply exist, warm pulse, cold breath, open sky. Then the rooster crows again and the spell breaks. You plant boots, square shoulders, and push the spade deeper. First slice of earth rolls over, smelling of life and decay. A day in the life has officially begun, one stubborn clod at a time, while the first pale lark spirals overhead, calling the day to arms. The lark's spiraling song fades behind you as you trudge back toward the cottage for the briefest taste of warmth and breakfast before fieldwork truly begins. Smoke curls from the low chimney like a beckoning finger, and once you duck under the lintel, the snug darkness swallows you whole, smelling of ash, sheep's wool, and the comforting tang of simmering grain. The fire has rallied since you nursed it earlier. Orange tongues now lick a three-legged pot whose iron sides sweat with steam. Mother kneels nearby, ladle poised like a knight's lance, while your sister fans smoke away from sleepy eyes. You add an armful of alder kindling to the hearth, coaxing extra heat that snaps and pops like mischievous sprites. Sparks ride the updraft before winking out against the soot-glazed chimney stones. Morning's chores are divided with minimal words, everyone still hoarding their voice, as if conversation incurs a tax. You handle the livestock, check the sow, sprinkle grain for the hens, dump turnip tops for the goat. Your younger brother will fetch water again. Your sister will darn father's threadbare hose. Bartering chores is a silent art here, as natural as breathing. Raise an eyebrow at the goat pen, nudge the water bucket with a foot, tilt your head toward the hens. Negotiations sealed in gestures. You ladle porridge into wooden trenchers. The stuff is thick enough to stand a spoon, barley pearls bloated and creamy from the slow night simmer. A dollop of yesterday's honey, scavenged when the bees were sluggish with cold, glints amber against the greyish mush. Mother allows this luxury only when someone braves stings, so the sweetness tastes of courage. Did you know barley accounted for nearly half a peasant's yearly caloric intake? Not because anyone adored its flavour, but because it tolerated lousy soil and endless rain better than wheat ever could. Steam fogs your face as you shovel the first spoonful between chapped lips. It lands with a comforting thud in an otherwise empty stomach, and warmth radiates outward to fingers, toes, and even hopes. The family eats in concentric silence, broken only by the crackle of oak and an occasional slurp. Shadows dance across the wattle walls, turning the tiny cottage into a shifting puppet theatre where spoons become swords and steam becomes spectral knights charging the rafters. Your father, already dressed for the manor's woodland task, clears his throat, preparing to assign the day's heavier labours. He gestures with two fingers toward the roof. After last night's frost, the thatch has settled in odd angles, inviting leaks when spring rains arrive. You promise to patch the worst sag with fresh reed bundles once fieldwork wanes. He nods, satisfied, and tucks a small carved token into your sister's pocket, a charm against accidents, or so legend claims. Historians still argue whether such household talismans were born of Christian syncretism or older pagan roots, but either way, you're glad for any extra luck. As bowls empty, Mother scrapes the pot clean, every crust destined for someone's mouth. Waste is a luxury peasants cannot afford. Even the rooster would protest stinginess. Your brother produces a small wooden whistle and peeps an off-key tune until father confiscates it. A merciful act. The goat outside bleats, jealous of attention. Work boots reclaimed, you duck out once more into a morning that has softened ever so slightly. Sunlight bleeds peach across the treetops. The air carries the scent of damp wood smoke from every chimney in the village. A communal breakfast hymn rising skyward. You pass neighbour Martha's cottage in time to see her twins wrestling over the single spoon they own. She waves, holds up a crust as if to toast you, and vanishes indoors. At the byre you scatter straw, checking the sow's ear for fresh bites. Pigs squabble like tavern drunks if penned too long. A quick repair to the gate latch and you move on, flicking mud off your hose. The goat eyes you with suspicion reserved for tax collectors, but cannot resist the turnip tops you drop. Bribes work on four-leggers too. Chores swirl like eddies. You balance water buckets on a yoke, hips swaying to keep puddles from sloshing onto trousers. You toss last year's shriveled apples into the compost trench. You wedge a splintery board beneath the table leg, so breakfast tomorrow won't list like a storm-tossed ship. Each task is small yet vital, stitches in the village's worn-out quilt of survival. Inside again, the cottage feels almost cheerful, smoke thinned to a polite haze. Mother ties her headcloth tighter and begins spinning flax fibre, foot-tapping a pedal rhythm older than the kingdom itself. The squeak of the wheel joins the soft thuds of father sharpening his billhook against a whetstone. You grab that billhook afterward, testing its edge with a thumb. Sharp enough to shave crow feathers, though shaving is a luxury reserved for feast days and ambitious nobles. Breakfast concluded, the family gathers for a brief prayer. Father intones half-remembered Latin while mother traces a cross in mid-air, though you catch her eyes wandering toward the ceiling where leeks wait in ambush. The baby stirs, hiccups, and resumes dreaming of whatever babies dream. Likely endless milk and a world without tax quotas. You shoulder your spade and the freshly honed billhook, kiss the top of mother's kacheeted head, tweak your sister's nose to earn a scowl, and step outside for good this time. Sunlight finally filters through the thinning fog, gilding frost so the entire lane dazzles like powdered glass. Somewhere beyond the church bell's reach, the Lord's steward is already tallying debts on a wax tablet. Your stomach tightens despite the warm porridge. Numbers have a way of loosening knees more than any battlefield blade. Past the well, the village common stretches toward hedgerows where crows convene parliament. Their caws feel like commentary on your schedule, never flattering. A neighbour's dog trails you for a few paces, then veers off to inspect a mysterious smell only dogs can esteem. You mutter a good-natured insult at its flea circus. The dog wags, as though applauding. At the field boundary you glance back once, catching the faint silhouette of smoke rising from your chimney. Inside, mother will be humming a lullaby nobody remembers writing, and father will be lacing boots patched so many times the original leather is mere rumour. Domestic scenes can be as heroic as any crusade, though bards seldom sing of porridge. You grip the spade harder, ready to shepherd that modest heroism out into furrows. Ahead, the earth waits, brown, stubborn, indifferent, yet brimming with the promise of life if coaxed with enough sweat. The sun edges higher, warming your shoulders through threadbare fabric. A deep breath tastes of wood smoke, barley, and the faintest trace of honey lingering on your tongue. The day's second act is about to begin, and you're on the stage whether you remembered your lines or not. You hop the rickety stile that separates cottage yards from the Lord's wide, rib-grained acres, souls squelching where frost has already surrendered to slush. The field unfurls in narrow strips, long brown ribbons stitched side by side like an overused patchwork quilt, and every peasant family owns precisely enough ribbon to keep them hungry for one more. A magpie cackles overhead, perhaps mocking the optimistic angle of your spade. You answer with a theatrical bow, because even birds deserve front-row sarcasm. Your neighbour Hugh trudges a few steps ahead, dragging the village's communal ard-plough, little more than a sharpened tree root shod in iron. Its single handle juts skyward like a begging limb, and Hugh leans against it as though confiding secrets to a cranky friend. When he spots you, he flashes a grin, cracked as last year's clay, and calls, "Late start, Butterlord. Did the rooster offer room service?" You tip an imaginary cap, retaliating, only because your snoring drowned out matins. The banter is as essential as bread. Without it, the day would taste of plain toil, and nobody survives on that flavour alone. At your allotted strip, you and Hugh trade tools. He keeps the spade to edge his ridge. You take the plough, guiding it behind the family's lone ox, Old Bramble, who chews cud with the philosophical calm of a monk pondering the infinite turnip. You click your tongue, press shoulder to beam, and the ard's blade bites shallowly into soil that's half mud, half rumour of fertility. Clods roll like miniature dark waves, each overturn releasing the living scent of last year's roots and ancient worm tunnels. Sweat pearls quickly beneath your cap, though the air remains crisp. You fall into cadence. Shove, breathe, step. Shove, breathe, step. Every fourth pace you flick a glance at the horizon, where the Lord's stone manor glitters in sunlight, a squat reminder of taxes past, present, and future. Somewhere behind those walls, a steward likely enjoys white bread while balancing ledgers written in your backache. You picture slipping just one muddy cabbage leaf between those pages for aromatic revenge, but such daydreams rarely pay rent. Hugh joins you when his own boundary is neat, cracking jokes about your ox's personal fragrance. You volley insults, and Bramble responds with an expressive tail flick that shower both of you in slurry, perfect punctuation. You laugh, despite the stink. Misery shared is misery halved, or at least hilariously redistributed. The open field system forces neighbours into reluctant choreography. No hedges, no fences, just invisible lines everyone swears they can see. A misturned furrow can spark an argument fiercer than any crusade, so you mind your markers. A weather-grade stake here, a stone cairn there, and the memory of where sunlight hit the dirt yesterday. The rhythm lulls you until tools, ox and body feel wired to the same slow drumbeat. You know, medieval plough teams often included up to 8 oxen on heavier soils. But poorer villages like yours managed with a single patient brute, swapping the beast among families in a rotating schedule tighter than any royal itinerary. Mid-morning brings the first cheese and onion break, signalled by Hugh slapping the plough handle like a tavern counter. You anchor Bramble's yoke to a wooden pin and drop onto a hummock, legs stretched, lungs heaving pleasant cold fire. From your pouch emerges the hard cheese shard saved at dawn. You pare it with a belt knife, hand half to Hugh, and bite the rest. Its sharpness cuts through mouthfuls of damp air, an edible trumpet call proclaiming, "Still alive!" Other villagers dot the field, Agnes humming while scattering seed, Tom kneeling to free a ploughstone gumming his blade. Voices carry on the breeze, snippets of gossip about a runaway goose, speculation that the reeve hides extra wool under his cloak to pad tax counts. Predictions that rain will, of course, arrive on the festival day. A collective exhale drifts skyward, forming a temporary cloud of human warmth that briefly competes with the sun. Break over, you haul the plough once more, muscles protesting like mutinous deckhands. The soil grows clingier as the ground warms, each clay gobbet nursing ambitions of cement. You lean harder, boots skidding. When the blade finally clears the end stake, you pivot, set heel to furrow crest, and guide Bramble back down the next strip. Thus the world becomes a giant sewing project. Push forward to stitch, pivot to return, your body the needle threading hope through earth. By now sweat darkens your tunic, you taste salt each time wind licks a bead from your lips. Yet joy ambushes you in odd moments. A skylark dive-bombing a beetle, sunlight catching a dew diamond on the ploughshare, Hugh's impromptu ditty rhyming muck with something best left unquoted. Labour pains, yes, but also labour music. At the far corner, a shallow drainage ditch gurgles with meltwater, glinting like a silver scar across brown skin. You pause to scoop a palmful, splashing face and neck. Cold shock reawakens every nerve cluster dozing under warm fatigue. Bramble slurps greedily. You scratch his wiry ear, murmuring thanks for being the village's uncelebrated engine. He responds by leaning all his considerable weight into your hip, nearly toppling you into the mud. Affection comes in heavy doses out here. The church bell tolls for terse, its bronze throat rolling sound over ploughed links. You cross yourself on reflex, though thoughts dart elsewhere, to mother spinning flax, to father lopping small trees in the Lord's wood, to your sister brushing straw from the roof beams, the moment sunshine found its courage. Life beyond the field continues in parallel tracks, weaving the same tapestry of necessity. By late morning you've carved enough furrows to satisfy the steward's weekly expectation. At least, you hope so. Shoulders buzz like bees, and a blister sprouts on your palm despite the bacon grease wraps. Hugh, now several strips away, waves his hat in salute, or surrender. Hard to tell. You answer with the spade held aloft like a battered banner. As you unyoke Bramble and loop the rope around his muzzle, clouds gather along the western rim, stacking grey upon grey. Rain isn't forecast in any formal sense. Medieval weather apps remain woefully underfunded. But your knees predict drizzle by vespers. Speed becomes strategy. Seeds sown before showers sprout better, yet furrows left uncovered risk washing out. You decide to plough one more ridge before heading home for the midday meal, bargaining with the sky in nervous glances. Wind picks up, plucking at tunic hem, carrying the mingled scents of overturned earth and distant cooking fires. Somewhere, a child giggles, chasing a runaway goose across a boundary strip. Future lawsuit in feathers. You smile, remembering Hugh's earlier jab. Perhaps that goose applied for asylum under your neighbour's porch. One last shove, one last slice. The blade cleaves soil with a satisfying shh that feels like a sigh of release. You guide Bramble off the field, boots sinking deeper in churned mud. At the gate, you pat the ox's flank, promise an extra handful of mash tonight, and secure the latch. Clouds eclipse the sun, but sweat keeps you warm. Muscles hum, not screaming now, but singing a low, exhausted hymn. As you plod toward home, you realize frost has fully vanished, replaced by that familiar farmyard perfume of manure and life. The world has shifted seasons in a single morning. Winter's last whisper fading behind the hoofprints of an ox and the crooked trail of a wooden plough. Supposing you survive tomorrow, and you probably will, miracles do happen, you'll carve new lines, trade new jokes, and chase the same stubborn harvest that forever teases the edge of hunger. For now, porch smoke signals lunch, and that is purpose enough. You round the turn by Martha's cabbage patch, just as the church bell tolls sext. An iron belly rumble that declares it officially gossip o'clock. The communal well squats at the village centre like an ancient storyteller, its worn stone lip polished by centuries of elbows and secrets. You hoist your bucket onto the shoulder yoke, boots clacking over frost-flecked cobbles now melting into honest mud. A dozen neighbours already orbit the well, forming a loose constellation whose brightest stars are loose tongues. Agnes, sleeves rolled and freckles blazing like signal fires, is first to pounce. "Saw 2 crows circling the north field," she says, dipping her rope as if fishing for applause. "Bad omen. Means mildew in the barley." You nod gravely, though inside you suspect crows mostly circle lunch, not prophecy. Still, omens are village currency. Dismiss one and you risk bankrupting conversation. Hugh lounges nearby, foot propped on the bucket he should be filling. He waves a mud-smeared hand. Forget crows. Reeves lost his boots again. Left him drying too near the sow pen. Pig must have taken a shine. Laughter ripples outward. Even old Reeve, were he present, would snort at that image. You toss back. Boots taste better when marinated in taxes. Hugh salutes with an imaginary tankard. You slip your rope over the winch peg and let the bucket descend. The pulley creaks a melodic groan, and cool echo stirs from below as if the well itself sighs at human folly. Down, down, splash. Then up comes a pail brimming with water so clear it seems invisible, save for the trapped wedge of sky quivering at the surface. Did you know villagers guarded their wells like royal treasure, fining anyone who rinsed laundry too near the rim? Even a stray cabbage leaf could invite punishment harsher than petty theft. Clean water, after all, keeps entire hamlets upright. While your bucket drips, conversation turns to weather wagers. Tom swears he smelled iron in the dawn wind. Storm within 3 days. But Agnes counters with spiderweb lore. Dewy threads at sunrise mean fair skies tomorrow. Historians still argue whether medieval folk wisdom held genuine predictive power or simply offered psychological ballast against an uncontrollable climate. Yet here and now each theory feels like sturdy science. You weigh both claims, finally siding with whichever casts fewer shadows over your barley prospects. A troop of children charges past, wooden hoops rolling, wooden mouths yelping. The youngest, tiny Edric, trips and skids dangerously close to the well. You snag his tunic, steady him, and he gifts you a gap-toothed grin before rejoining the stampede. Mothers nod thanks without pausing their rumour weaving. Safety is communal here. The village raises its young like a jug passed round a feast. You add your own thread to the tapestry. Saw early catkins on the hazel hedges. Might mean a kinder spring. This sparks debate over whether catkins predict yields better than crows, and soon the wellside hums like a hive. In such moments you recognise why gossip thrives. It isn't idle chatter. It's democracy-shaped survival data, shared free of charge minus the occasional ego bruise. When your bucket is full, Agnes offers a sliver of dried pear in exchange for a sip. You accept, trade quick thanks, and bite. The fruit is leathery but sweet, A pocket-sized carnival. Sugar hits bloodstream, revving spirits dulled by plough duty. Across the circle, Widow Ellen brandishes a sprig of rosemary. "For the Reeves' feet," she declares, "in case Pig returns what it stole." More laughter as she tucks the herb into Hugh's cap. Apparently he is courier in this comedic saga. Next come whispered updates on Father Anselm's sermon drafts. Rumour claims he'll preach against alehouse sin this Sunday. Groans rise. You dramatise fainting, earning elbows to ribs and broad smiles. Someone suggests the Reeves' boots were stolen by sin itself, sin shaped like a pig, and the theology feels sound enough in the absence of clergy. Buckets refilled, folks begin dispersing toward cottages, fields, or the cosy promise of midday stew. You linger, one foot hooked on the stone curb, tracing patterns in puddles with your boot toe. Reflected clouds drift across the water, grey as smudged parchment. For a heartbeat, you imagine yourself tiny, sailing that reflected sky on a toy boat carved from Bramble's yoke scrap, free of taxes, chores, and mildew fears. The vision pops when Hugh claps your shoulder. "Reeve'll want them boots," he reminds, pointing at the herb-adorned cap, now listing sideways on his brow. "Care to join the search afternooning?" You shrug, half promise, knowing the adventure may degrade into muck-tracking and pig wrestling. A decent afternoon, all things considered. You shoulder the yoke, feeling the bars press familiar bruises. Water sloshes, sending cool droplets down the back of your neck. You set off along the central lane where cottages crowd each other like hens jostling for roost space. Overhead, chimney smoke braids into a single grey ribbon stitched tight by the still air. Conversations spill from open doorways. A quarrel over missing knitting needles. A lullaby crooned to a fretful baby. The clink of pewter ladles against wooden bowls. Each sound writes another line in the ballad of everyday endurance. Halfway home, you pass the byre and spot tracks. Hoofprints speckled with straw, leading suspiciously toward the orchard. Could be the Reeves' boot-snatching sow enjoying forbidden windfalls. You grin, banking the clue for later heroic bragging rights. A crow wings low, shadow sliding over your bucket. You salute it despite Agnes's prophecy. At your door, Mother welcomes you with quick relief. Water stores dwindled sooner than expected. You set the buckets beside the hearth and inhale aromas of carrot tops, leek, and a whisper of salted pork. The cottage air is thick but comforting, like a quilt you can breathe. Baby snores in a woven cradle, its tiny fist clutching the token father carved. Sister glances up from stitching your frayed cuff, needle flashing silver in fire-slanted light. Before lunch you'll stoke flame, patch a loose thatch reed, and perhaps follow Hugh on his boot quest. But for a stolen minute you simply stand, watching steam rise from the cauldron in lazy spirals, listening to crackling logs and distant laughter outside. The gossip churn still spins beyond the door, shaping truths and half-truths alike. Yet inside these walls the only rumour that matters is the promise of hot stew, delivered without tax. You dip a finger into the bucket, flick cold droplets onto your face, and let gratitude seep through the fatigue. The day is exactly half spent, conversation debts have been paid, and somewhere a pig waddles in illicit footwear. That feels like balance, crooked, comedic, and somehow perfect. The sex bell barely fades before the larger brass tongue of the church tower swings again, booming noon across roofs and furrows like a divine referee calling time out. You set the hearth poker aside, spoon one last swirl through the vegetable stew thickening over the fire, then scoop a steaming ladleful into a lidded clay pot. Sister bundles coarse bread, 2 small onions, and a crumbly hunk of yesterday's cheese in a linen wrap. Together, you slip out, the cottage sighing as the door thuds shut, into a village momentarily stunned into stillness by the midday bell. Sunlight now gleams high and direct, erasing frost and gossip alike. Even the crows seem too warm to critique anyone's farming technique. You navigate the lane the way a weary sailor steers towards shore taverns, every step already savouring the taste of rest. Martha waves from her doorway, cheeks flushed with cooking heat. She lifts a ladle in salute. Somewhere a baby squeals, freshly scrubbed. The reeve limps by in mismatched clogs, clearly still bootless, muttering oaths you're pretty sure don't appear in any hymnal. Past the byre, you and sister follow a narrow footpath toward the village edge, where hedgerows knot together like green braids. Wild roses show blush petals, hawthorn branches bristle with tender leaves, and the occasional early berry. Bees hum overhead in a lazy baritone, each one a winged merchant trading nectar for pollen. The grass underfoot is springy, smelling of rain yet to fall. You pick a spot half shaded by an ash sapling, drop to the ground with a grateful groan, and unbundle lunch. Stew breathes hearty steam the moment the lid lifts. You tear bread into chunks, dunking each piece until it sags, then ferry it to your mouth where root vegetable sweetness mingles with the tang of wood smoke. Sister crisps the cheese against a flat stone warmed by sun, an impromptu panini, and hands you a half. The nuttiness softens your tongue just in time for the sharp kiss of raw onion. Water from the well, still cool inside your flask, seals the flavours. Did you know, medieval peasants often called this midday pause dinner, leaving the evening bite to answer for the title supper? Our modern labels simply shuffled themselves during centuries of linguistic musical chairs. Silence settles, broken only by the steady fizz of insects and an occasional distant Eyes closed, you lean into the hedge's earthy shade, spine popping like a row of celebratory firecrackers. For the first time since dawn, you feel neither pulled nor pushed, just suspended. Breath in. Stew, grass, faint blossom. Breath out. Fatigue, boot-snatching pigs, and tomorrow's furrows. Sister plucks a wild daisy, twirls it by the stem, then tucks it behind your ear with mock ceremony. "Sir Mucken's sweat," she proclaims, curtsying with exaggerated grace. You bow in return, almost losing the flower into your stew pot. Laughter bubbles up, soft, genuine, turning the hedge nook into a private theatre where absurdity headlines. A drone of bumblebees drifts closer. One enormous fuzzball hovers near the daisy, apparently considering you for the village's largest floral arrangement. You blow a gentle puff and it veers off, disgruntled. Overhead, white clouds march in slow ranks, their shadows sliding across ploughed fields like massive, unseen sails. Afternoon heat has begun to loosen the soil. You imagine each clod softening under sunlight as though sighing at lunchtime too. Conversation meanders. Sister mentions seeing Edric chase the notorious goose straight through Widow Ellen's rosemary patch. Penance, she predicts, will be herb pulling until Pentecost. You wonder aloud whether the pig will ever relinquish the reeve's boots or simply upgrade to his cloak next. You both discuss how father might carve another charm token for the baby, perhaps shaped like a pig hoof for comedic protection. Stories spool out in long, unhurried threads, stitched with the mild sarcasm that defines sibling love. Food vanquished, you stretch full length on the grass, hat shading eyes, arms a sprawl of happy uselessness. Somewhere behind the hedgerow, a blackbird experiments with new riffs, stitching melody to bees' drone. The world feels briefly borderless, every anxiety blurred at the edges by sun haze. A butterfly lands on the rim of the clay pot, wings opening and closing like a miniature bellows, stoking colour into the afternoon. You resist the urge to move, unwilling to disturb such delicate bravado. Moments creep by, the kind that refuse clocks, and you almost drift into sleep, mind fluttering between dreamlets, floating across the well's mirror-water sky, sprinting alongside bramble through barley taller than houses, presenting the reeve's boots at court and being knighted Sir Soul-Saver. Sister nudges you awake before you start snoring loud enough to draw bees. She has braided grasses into a makeshift coronet and crowns your stupefied head. "Your Majesty of midday," she announces. You raise a pretend sceptre, a dry stalk, and decree that no one shall plough again until cheese grows on trees. The bees buzz their approval, or maybe demand royal tribute. Eventually, practicality taps your shoulder. Stew pot empty, bellies refueled, tasks still queued. You rinse the pot with a little flask water, swirl and pour it onto a thirsty patch of nettles. Might as well fertilize lunch for future rabbits. Sister pockets onion skins to toss on the cooking fire later. Their spicy perfume masks goat stench, a domestic win-win. You kneel, scraping a shallow cross into dirt with one forefinger, murmuring thanks for food and fleeting calm. Sister mirrors the gesture, each of you sealing the pause with the simplest of prayers. Maybe God is busy adjudicating lost boots, but acknowledging gratitude feels right. Rising, you shake grass from tunic and feel small ridges pressing where the ash sapling's roots insisted on a slow massage. Shadows lengthen just enough to coax flies from hedge blossoms onto your sweat-sheened arms. You wave them off, collect the clay pot and linen wrap, and start back toward the lane. Footsteps drag at first, the body reluctant to abandon rest, but heat and good humour lighten the load. Ahead, the smithy's anvil rings, a bright metallic heartbeat reminding everyone the village engine is revving up again. Halfway home you spot Hugh, bareheaded, sprinting after a squealing shape. Sure enough, the Reeves sow, now sporting a single muddy boot like a drunken dancer. Hugh trips, swears, and you laugh so hard you nearly spill pot lid. Sister whoops encouragement and the chase veers down an alley, echoing like slapstick theatre. Lunch's serenity crumples under hilarity, yet you wouldn't trade the spectacle for a king's feast. Back at the cottage, Mother greets you with raised brows at the daisy tucked behind your ear. You shrug, king-like, and deposit the pot on the hearth. Father, sweat damp from coppicing wood, grins at your grassy crown. In few words you recount the sow saga. Laughter ripples, fatigue disperses. Noon respite complete, the household gears click back into motion. Sister to thatch repairs, father to chopping block, you to field edge where seeds and clouds maintain their complicated courtship. Stepping outside again, you pause to inhale the lingering stew aroma, the hedgerow honey still coating the breeze, and the far echo of the church bell, striking the half hour. An unsubtle reminder that time's comfort is rented, never owned. You tip your daisy crown at the sky, return it to the hedge for bees to reclaim, and strime on, spine loosening as though still leaning against that ash sapling. Hunger conquered, spirit steadied, you're ready for Act 2 of Daylight, no script required. You have barely planted a dozen bean seeds when the afternoon calm snaps like a dry twig. Hoofbeats drum down the lane, steady, deliberate, and far too polished to belong to Hugh's mule or Martha's limping nag. You straighten, hand-shading eyes, and watch as the Lord Steward trots into view on a glossy bay gelding whose mane shines as if buttered. Dust swirls behind them like a private banner. The steward's riding coat glitters with brass buttons that could pay your tithe twice over. His expression, however, is the exact opposite of generous. Word of his arrival spreads faster than summer thunder. Children abandon hoop-rolling mid-bounce. Agnes flings seed as though salting curses on the wind. Even Bramble the ox lifts his head as if recalling some unpaid debt. You wipe soil from palms, schooling your face into the blank mask peasants perfect by adolescence. Half respect, half survival, zero opinions. The steward reins up beside the buyer and produces a leather ledger, a rectangular doom stitched in calfskin. He dismounts with a fluid efficiency that makes you suspect he practices in front of a mirror. Without preamble, he snaps, "All households assemble." The command floats down the lane, thin yet barbed. Mothers hustle toddlers indoors, then re-emerge, aprons smoothed, smiles stapled. Fathers wipe axe blades, hide any fresh-caught rabbits, poached naturally, and line up like mismatched soldiers. You join the gathering knot near the well. The steward flicks a quill from his hatband and begins the inventory. Hens, pigs, cider barrels, flax bundles, and most dreaded, able bodies for harvest levy. He stops first at Widow Ellen's coop, flicking a disapproving glance at feathers strewn like confetti. 5 hens declared, he intones. She answers, voice tight. "A fox took 2 last moon, sir." His quill hovers, then scratches. "Fox losses unverified, unpaid balance due." Widow Ellen's shoulders sag, but she mutters no protest. You feel anger prickle, then retreat. Loud righteousness can cost coin. Or skin. Next, the steward marches to your family's cottage. Father steps forward, wiping sawdust from his sleeves. 2 pigs, 1 ox, 6 hens, 4 cider barrels, he recites. The steward's eyebrow climbs. Cider barrels were 3 at last tally. Father explains the 4th was pressed from windfall apples after Michaelmas, meaning higher tax now. The steward's quill scritches approval. Did you know? Medieval cider often served as liquid currency. In some shires, a barrel equaled a week's labour tax, sparing families the heartbreak of bartering away livestock. The steward gestures for verification. You lead him to the lean-to where barrels squat like wooden monks. He raps each rim, listening for resonance. One sour bung, and you pay twice. Satisfied, he chalks a sigil on the staves, proof of feudal mathematics completed. Outside, neighbours whisper about the reeve's missing boots again. Rumour insists the steward will find footwear negligence next. You smother a smile. Right now humour is contraband. Back at the ledger, he surveys the semicircle of villagers. His lordship commends your diligence, he says. Tone so flat the compliment feels counterfeit. But unrest in nearby hamlets requires stricter levies. A collective inhale tightens the air. You picture unrest, maybe a brawl over grazing rights, maybe a priest preaching tax resistance. Either way, the threat hangs like a loaded cloud. Historians still argue whether such visits stemmed from genuine fear of rebellion or simple, opportunistic greed cloaked in security language. Today, it feels like both. The steward's eyes measure each stiff back, weighing spine strength against revenue potential. He unrolls a parchment sealed with wax. Effective next quarter, every household must provide an extra day's corvée labour and one additional hen. Gasps slip despite everyone's best efforts at stoicism. Agnes's freckles blanch. Hugh mutters something anatomically improbable under breath. You count silently. Your flock may cover the demand, but barely. Losing an egg layer midwinter could spell thin porridge come Lent. The steward continues. Failure to comply invites confiscation of goods or, here he pauses for theatrical relish, detention. He snaps the parchment closed, its crack loud as a whip, then, softer, almost conspiratorial. Of course, his lordship rewards loyalty. Cooperate, and perhaps a portion of forest tide will be forgiven after harvest. The carrot and stick routine dances so artfully you almost clap. Inventory resumes. At Hugh's cider shed, the steward notices a boot print atop a barrel, sow-shaped if you're honest. His eyes narrow. Hugh shrugs with innocence he doesn't own. Nearby villagers stifle snorts. The steward marks something unsavoury in the ledger, likely a maintenance fine for porcine vandalism. Hugh mouths a silent curse toward the unseen pig, who presumably twirls in stolen footwear somewhere beyond the hedge. Sun slips westward, gilding the steward's brass buttons to near blinding. He completes the tally, seals the ledger and mounts his horse. Before trotting off, he turns, voice silk covering steel. Keep your tongues prudent, whispers travel. His gaze sweeps the circle, lingers on you, perhaps noticing the dirt-crowned line where your noon grass coronet rested. You nod, expression carved from stone. Only when the gelding's hoof falls fade do lungs collectively exhale. Conversation erupts like pent-up steam. Martha counts hens aloud, recalculating loss to fox ratios. Tom predicts riots by midsummer. Agnes wonders if extra corvée thanks will repair the church roof at least. You shake out your shoulders, feeling the weight of an invisible hen already roosting there. Father claps your back. We'll manage, he murmurs. But his eyes track cloud build all the same. Resilience is a muscle the village flexes daily, yet each new levy tests its tensile limit. You volunteer to cull one of the older birds. Thin meat makes poor soup but better tax, and to split cider rations thinner. The conversation feels less like planning and more like triage. Evening light softens, casting long blue shadows that make the lane look half drowned. The assembly drifts apart, clutching ledgers of their own, mental columns of what can be spared without surrendering survival. You pause at the well, drawing a quick scoop to cool frustration. Water mirrors your frown. You splash it away. Revolt sounds romantic in ballads, but here, rebellion often ends with empty pots and fresh graves. Better perhaps to outwit the system quietly, bred hens faster, barter hidden cider, pray the steward's arithmetic overlooks miracles. You head home, meeting Hugh who brandishes a muddy boot, pig captured at last. Triumph dims though, when he admits the pair still mismatched, the other boot beyond retrieval. You both laugh anyway. Comedy patches cracks fear cannot fill. Maybe we tax him for partial footwear, you joke. Hugh bows, offering the trophy, but you wave it off. One boot can't balance a ledger written in quills and threats. At your door, Mother listens to the news, mouth a tight line. She unhooks a smoked ham from the rafter, weighs it in her palms, then rehangs it. Decision deferred. Over supper she will pass every crumb of steward speech, searching for loopholes. Strategy blooms in ordinary kitchens faster than wheat in lordly fields. As twilight paints the cottage with soot-blue strokes, you realize life remains what it was this morning. Soil to turn, mouths to feed, jokes to crack. Only now, somewhere in the ledger of tomorrow, an extra hen flaps nervously. You stroke Bramble's muzzle, whispering conspiratorial comfort. We'll get through. We always do. He snorts agreement, as if to say taxes may ride horses, but harvests ride oxen. Scarcely has the dust of the steward's horsetail settled when a cry ripples down the lane. "Bring your sides, grass is lying!" The call has the urgency of a temple gong. Every able arm answers because the sky, sulking pewter at the edges, threatens to drown wages in an afternoon downpour. You grab your scythe from its peg, blade honed yesterday until it could split a hair or a boast, and jog toward the common meadow where the village cuts its feed hay. Shoulders ache from the morning's plough, but worry about butterless winter cows aches louder. The meadow rolls out in shaggy, waist-high waves, silver green under the sullen light. Already Hugh, Agnes, Tom, and a cluster of other neighbours form a ragged line, scythes held chest-high like stylized wings. You slot yourself between Hugh and Agnes. She flashes the freckled grin of someone pretending the steward's news never happened. Bramble the ox, newly unburdened, grazes on the meadow fringe, tail twitching in time with no music yet played. Hugh raises his scythe, everyone mirrors, a collective breath. Then he drops the blade in a graceful arc. Steel whispers through stems, and the rest of you follow a heartbeat behind. Swoosh step, instant choreography. Within seconds the air fills with the peppery scent of fresh slashed grass, a perfume both humble and triumphant. But rhythm is fragile. Without a beat, muscles splinter into chaos. So Agnes begins a work chant, voice bright as a fiddle. Swing low, brave steel, kiss the sleeping field. Every swath we borrow feeds our winter's meal. Her tune is simple, notes sliding like oiled hinges. Soon you all hum the refrain. Your scythe strokes synchronize with the melody, each cut finishing on the downbeat. If a lark tried to improvise right now, you'd scalp it by accident. The chant evolves, second verse written on the fly, half lyrics rhyming with tacks and backs, half with invented words whose only job is to hold the tempo. You belt them anyway, off-key enough to scare clouds into retreat. Did you know? Medieval farm songs weren't just morale boosters. Crop rhythms matched the pace precisely, letting crews judge uniform swath width without measuring sticks, a living metronome for agriculture. You feel that truth in your bones as the line glides forward, blades fanning crisp grass into tidy windrows. The swish-crunch sound begins to hypnotize, a slow, serrated heartbeat beneath the sung refrains. Somewhere behind you, children gather tossed stalks into loose bundles, giggling each time a frog leaps from the greenery like a tiny green expletive. Clouds deepen though, stacking grey stones across the western sky. The air shifts, cool and metallic, and a distant rumble hints at thunder rehearsing. Hugh calls, "Faster! Or we'll bale water instead of hay." He picks up tempo. Agnes modulates the chant into a quicker meter, words tripping over one another like drunken monks racing to vespers. Your arms protest, forearms pulsing, but the new beat drags you forward as reliably as any drum corps. Sweat drips off your nose, peppering the scythe handle. Every 15 strides you slide the blade against the whetstone hanging from your belt. Shing, shing. Sparks flicker then die in the damp breeze. A dull scythe courts disaster and mockery. Sharp steel is safer than vain pride. Hugh accidentally nicks a clump of nettles, spraying spiteful needles onto his trousers. He yelps, hops, then rejoins rhythm, adding an improvised stanza about burning nettle patches and steward ledgers in the same fire. Laughter welds itself to fatigue. Nothing lubricates sore shoulders like shared absurdity. Bramble ambles along the edge, snuffling windrows, blissfully unaware of taxation or thunderstorms. You envy that bovine zen until he manages to step on his own tether and startles himself into a clumsy pirouette. Comic relief endorsed by the meadow audience. You salute him with your scythe. He snorts as though accepting bouquets. Grass piles taller, clouds crawl lower. A cool droplet lands on your cheek. Maybe sweat, maybe omen. You glance upward through wind-shaken locks, just in time to see sky flash white, far off but stern. Agnes shifts the tune again, now a brisk military clip. Swing step, swing step. The line obeys. Scythe slicing so quickly edges blur. Your lungs burn, but adrenaline overrules. If rain hits before grass is raked, mold will feast all winter, and starving cows are louder than thunder. Wind snatches shreds of melody, scattering them across hedgerows where sparrows clap their invisible hands. You half hear snatches of conversation woven into the chant, speculation that the steward's horse spoils will buy new chapel shingles, wagers on whether the pig returns the other boot by Christmas, jokes that extra corvée hours will include musical training, so everyone can at least sing on key. None of it breaks pace. The scythes keep drumming. Stripe by stripe, the meadow transforms into orderly rows, emerald changing to flattened jade. Children run. Lightning forks again, closer. The sky grumbles with increasing petulance, but the first fat raindrop delays, perhaps respectful of your determination, perhaps calibrating its aim. Hugh shouts, "Last sweep!" He and you trade nods. Muscles coil for a final sprint down the meadow's length. Sides arc in near-perfect unison, steel meeting stalk after stalk in a furious, graceful massacre. The song dissolves into hoarse breaths and gritted mantras. Keep pace, cut clean, no slips. At the final boundary stone, blades lift simultaneously. A chorus of clunked handles drops onto grass, as if stage directions demanded applause. For a heartbeat, the only sound is panting. Then Agnes lets out a victory whoop that ricochets off storm clouds, startling birds skyward. Everyone cheers, ragged, joyous, undeniably loud. Rain chooses that moment to begin, spatters at first, then a steady hiss. But windrows are complete, bundles tied, meadow conquered. You heft your scythe onto one shoulder, grabbing a rake with the other hand, and band together in an impromptu bucket brigade, dragging bundles beneath a low oak whose branches form a natural umbrella. Water drums the leaves overhead. Stray droplets flick ears and lash cheeks, but the bulk of the harvest stays dry. Success feels like borrowed sunshine. When the last bundle lies safe, thunder cracks a decisive gavel. You and Hugh exchange drenched grins, shirt sleeves plastered to arms, hair dripping, eyes bright. Agnes flings raindrops skyward like confetti, shrieking delight. Even Bramble seems celebratory, shaking rain off his hide in great wet sheets that baptize a dozen children squealing nearby. The meadow now steams under the sudden cool assault, a green dragon exhaling. You inhale that vapor, smell of chlorophyll and lightning-tinged ozone swirling together into something that tastes strangely like hope. The steward may tally hens mercilessly, but sky, field and sweat have forged wealth no ledger recognizes. You lash the scythe blade with oiled cloth, tucking it under the oak to rest. Muscles throb yet hum. Exhaustion and accomplishment duel, embrace, then settle into a satisfied truce. Rain intensifies, drumming rhythm onto oak leaves, as if mocking your earlier song with nature's own percussion. You laugh anyway. Music is music, whether sung or poured. Someone suggests celebrating at the alehouse once storms pass. You nod, picturing Section 8 of this day, the sweet, smoky interior where watered ale and bawdy saints' jokes wait. But for now, you lean against the oak trunk, let rain cool your fire-bright skin, and watch bundles of hay stand proud like toy soldiers relieved at dusk. Tomorrow they'll march to lofts and byres, buying livestock another season of breathing. For the first time since dawn, you feel a sincere, unqualified triumph. No steward, no pig in pilfered footwear, no extra corvée can erase that. Rain slackens to a misty drizzle, just as you and the rest of the hay crew slosh back into the village, sides over shoulders like heroic trophies that no troubadour will ever rhyme about. Lanterns flare behind crooked shutters, turning puddles into bronze mirrors. A warm amber glow leaks from the timber-framed alehouse at the lane's bend, the unofficial parliament where barley, gossip, and questionable theology ferment together. Your boots, caked in meadow mud and celebratory grass stains, squelch up the oak threshold, and the door yawns open on a gust of roasted malt steam. Inside, the world compresses into low rafters, thick smoke, and the multi-instrument chorus of clanking mugs, off-key humming, and crackling hearth logs. Rushes strewn across the packed earth floor muffle footsteps, but do nothing for the smell. Ale tang, goat wool, wet cloak, and a scandalous hint of someone's garlic sausage. Agnes squeezes past, cheeks still grass-freckled, and claims a bench with the authority of a crowned queen. You collapse beside her. Hugh perches opposite, depositing the steward-soiled boot on the table like a sacred relic. Laughter detonates in 3 different octaves. The tavern wife, broad-shouldered, apron spotless only at sunrise, slides over with a jug of brown ale so thin you can almost read tomorrow's worries through it. You hand over 2 wooden tokens carved last winter from orchard prunings. She nods and paws. Foam the colour of toasted oats slips down the mug's rim onto your knuckles, pleasantly sticky. 1 swallow later, your muscles loosen, and the room focuses as if someone trimmed the torch wicks. Conversation ricochets from table to table. Tom retells the meadow heroics, enlarging lightning bolts to the width of church spires. In his version, you and Hugh sliced grass while thunder applauded. Agnes tops him by reenacting Hugh's nettle dance with such accuracy the whole room winces in sympathy. Historians still argue whether alehouses like this doubled as informal newsrooms or were merely pressure valves, but tonight they're both. Tales expand, taxes shrink, and fear dissolves faster than malt froth. A fiddler in the corner worries his strings with more enthusiasm than skill, bow screeching through a half-remembered dance tune. Patrons stomp along anyway, mugs thumping rhythm on sticky boards. You join in, palm drumming, heart sinking to the communal beat. The tavern wife plunks down a platter of soft cheese, pickled beetroot, and rye heels, payment for your help stacking her hay bundle beneath the oak earlier. You spear a beet cube with a belt knife and pass the dish around. Did you know most medieval alehouse profits came not from drink, but from the bench fee, a small coin charged simply for the right to sit down? Proof that even in the Middle Ages, comfort carried a surcharge. You joke that tonight's bench feels like a gilded throne after scythe duty. Agnes retorts that gilded thrones don't usually wobble on 3 legs. The bench creaks. Across the room, the Reeve, now in mismatched clogs and a conspicuously bootless glare, nurses a mug. He eyes Hugh's table with the intensity of a cat tracking a particularly disrespectful mouse. Hugh raises the liberated boot in mock toast. The Reeve responds by draining his ale, perhaps envisioning tomorrow's fine schedule. You lean in, whispering that diplomacy suggests returning contraband before sunrise. Hugh replies diplomacy can wait until the pig signs a confession. The evening gathers momentum. Torches sputter, smoke lofts, and voices climb rafters where spiders presumably revise their webs to record the latest exaggerations. A dice game rattles near the hearth. Every clatter triggers cheers or moans as fortunes of beans and buttons swap owners. You wager a single barley kernel on Agnes's toss. She blows on the bone-white cubes, rolls snake eyes, and declares snake eyes lucky somewhere in the world. Kernel lost, lesson learned. Near the door, Father Anselm himself, robe smoking from rain, leans against the lintel, observing merriment with an indulgent half-smile. He knows sermon thunder rarely competes with alehouse lightning. Still, his presence tones down the bawdy lyrics, replacing outright scandal with innuendo you could explain to saints if pressed. The fiddler segues into a gentler lament about weary pilgrims. Someone harmonizes, surprisingly sweet, and a hush settles, mugs mid-air, as the harmony threads candlelight into something like reverence. Song finished, chatter erupts again. You notice Mother's old neighbour, Widow Ellen, huddled near the fire, shawl steaming. You bring her a slice of rye, and she thanks you by pressing a sprig of rosemary into your palm. "For luck in the steward's ledger," she says. The scent cuts through smoke, sharp and green, reminding you of the earlier catkin optimism. Perhaps omens, like taxes, work on compound interest. Casks empty quicker than worries, and watered ale morphs into strong gossip. A bearded carpenter insists the steward exaggerates rebel tales to justify new levies. Tom counters that the steward dreams of erecting a stone dovecot and needs pigeon rent to fund it. Hugh proposes drafting the pig as village ambassador. First agenda item, shoe reform. Laughter bucks the table so hard the wobble leg finally splinters. Mugs slosh, prompting cheers louder than complaints. You wedge the steward's boot under the crippled limb. Balance restored, boot repurposed, problem solved. After a while, heat and hops weave drowsiness. You lean back, shoulders sinking into candle glow, eyelids heavy. The rain outside hushes to a drizzle so soft it might be imaginary. Sounds blur, crackle pop of logs, distant dice clatter, the low thread of Uncle Wulfric retelling for the 17th time how he once shared soup with a bishop. Lantern light paints everyone in honey and shadow, making even the Reeves' scowl look almost comedic. Time slips its leash. The fiddler dozes mid-tune, bow resting on slack strings. Torches gutter. Father Anselm departs, cloak billowing like last call. You set your empty mug down, watch foam slide in lazy eddies, and feel the day's labour finally unclench its grip. Outside, a single bell tolls Compline, soft, cautionary. You rise, legs tingling, stretch until vertebrae pop like knuckles and nudge Hugh awake. He tucks the liberated boot under his arm as though it's the night's best joke gift. Door swung open, the cool air kisses flushed cheeks. Lanterns along the lane glow hazy gold in fog, lighting your staggered walk home. Mud sucks at boots, ale hums in veins. Agnes sings the scythe chant under her breath, slower now, cradle soft. You join for a bar or two, then lapse into contented quiet. Somewhere ahead your cottage lamp flickers, promising leftover stew, and the baby's huff-puff snores. You inhale the damp night, wood smoke, rain-washed earth, lingering malt, and think, not for the first time, that survival might hinge less on muscle and more on shared song, borrowed benches, and a boot-propped table leg supporting everyone's fragile equilibrium. Clouds drift past a shy sliver of moon, and the village, though poorer by hens and corvée hours, feels rich enough to bankroll dreams. You slip through the cottage door just ahead of Agnes's fading song, sliding the wooden latch home against the chill that rides the misty lane. Half embers glow low, breathing scarlet through ash like sleepy fireflies. But the room is drowsy warm and smells of stew, damp wool, and the faint coppery tang of lamplight. Mother looks up from spinning, candle making halos in her eyes. Father hunks over the tiny workbench you cobbled together last winter, scraping a nicked draw knife across a length of cracked harness leather. He nods at the empty stool beside him, silent shorthand for, "Your turn." You shrug off wet cloak, hang it beside the baby's wicker cradle, then kneel to stoke the fire. Oak splints flare, shadows chasing themselves around wattle walls. The baby whimpers. Colic again, that nightly guest more persistent than the steward's quill, so you rock the cradle with one boot while coaxing flame with the other hand. The dual rhythm feels absurdly natural. Forge heat, soothe child. Forge heat, soothe child. Dinner's thin dregs wait in the pot, but first things first. Father hands you the patching awl, and you study the harness strap. A morning's ploughing left it chafed raw where Bramble's shoulders rubbed. If you don't mend it now, tomorrow's furrows will brand the poor beast. You cut a wedge of softer leather, salvaged from a pair of slippers past saving, and start punching holes. The awl's tip squeaks through hide. You thread waxed flaxcord and begin a ladder stitch. Each tug draws edges snug, like closing a mouth on a secret. Outside, the wind frets at thatch, reminding you the roof patch still waits. "Bean day went well?" Mother asks, voice soft to spare the baby's ears. You summarize lightning, chance, and the heroic oak umbrella while continuing to stitch. Father grunts approval at the hay tally, but grimaces at news of extra hens owed. He flexes his calloused fingers, silent arithmetic of what can and cannot be spared. Harness finished, you smear tallow across the seam, buff until it shines. Good as new, Bramble, you promise, hanging it where leather can bask in hearth heat. Now, roof. You grab the reed bundle stashed earlier, climb the ladder wedged against the crossbeam, and push open a tiny loft hatch. Cold air rushes in, smelling of wet meadow and chimney soot. You wiggle onto the roof, knees sinking into springy thatch. Moon slits the cloud bank, silvering each straw tip until the whole slope glitters like coins a miser spilled. Your pat spot yawns above the rafters, an open grin where frost buckled reeds. Knees anchored, you weave fresh stalks under and over the existing layers, fingers numb but sure. Rushlights from the window below cast trembling gold on your hands, helpful as a friend steadying a ladder. Did you know seasoned thatchers drove wooden pegs called spars diagonally through reed layers? The V-shaped pieces held roofing tight long before iron nails became common. You tap in 2 willow spars, bending their points inward so rain can't pry them loose, and test the patch, firm as steward's arithmetic. Roof sealed, you crawl back, closing the hatch to a hiss of grateful warmth. The baby chooses that moment to howl, tiny fists brandishing invisible grievances. Mother's lullaby falters. Exhaustion cracks her usually even tone. You scoop the bundle into your arms, pacing the cramped floorboards while whispering the meadow chant slowed to cradle tempo. Verse by verse, you swap side cadences for heartbeats until the baby's cries shrink to hiccups, then to sighs. Eyes half-lidded, the child clutches your thumb as if anchoring to safer tides. You settle on the 3-legged stool, the same rescued earlier by the steward's boot, and rock gently, remembering tavern laughter still clinging to your ears like sweet malt. Father finishes sharpening his draw knife, sets it aside with ceremonial care, and reaches for a joint of smoked ham. He cuts wafers so thin lamplight shows through. These, with crusty bread heels, become supper. The baby sleeps between heartbeats. You shift to free a hand and accept a slice. The ham tastes of alder smoke, salt, and impossible luxury. Mother sighs gratitude over each bite, then whispers tomorrow's plan. Barter eggs for lamp oil. Ask widow Ellen if her hens will brood spare chicks. Simple strategies. War room serious. You nod, mouth full. Mind ticking through steward quotas, ox feed, seed wheat. Survival is algebra solved nightly with breadcrumbs and whispered promises. The candle gutters, shortening its wick. Shadows climb. You tuck the sleeping baby into the cradle, wedge a folded cloth beside its round belly for comfort, and draw the rushlight closer. Father arranges harness and tools for dawn. Spade, repaired leather, the cursed boot Hugh gifted as comic pay. It sits by the door like a limp punchline. Wind rattles the shutters. Rain has returned, softer now, pattering a lullaby on fresh-patched thatch. You feel it reverberate through roof timbers, a satisfied drum roll. The cottage trembles in time, but no drip darkens the ceiling. Your fix holds. Pride wedges between ribs, quiet but warm. You bank the hearth, spreading ash to smother greedy flames, and slip the iron trivet across. Ember glow dims to a drowsy pulse. Family gathers for prayer. Father's Latin barely above whisper. Mother tracing small crosses on each forehead. Sister murmuring for the Reeves' lost boot to find salvation. You add silent thanks for hay bundles safe under oak, and harness seams slick with tallow. Prayer ends, night stretches, mother retires to the low-rope bed, father collapses on straw palace, sister curls near the hearth with a cat that emigrated during rain. You lay out your own blanket by the door. First watch against drafts or over-curious pigs. Before settling, you glance around. Patched roof snug overhead, harness gleaming, baby breathing even, but tomorrow's dawn already rustling outside like a page eager to turn. Still, for this slim midnight slice, everything balances. Hunger snores, tax ledgers nap, and wind-washed moonlight sifts through chinks, dusting the room in hush. You adjust the boot under the wobbly table leg, small safeguard against collapse, and ease onto your blanket. Ear pressed to floorboards, you hear brambles lowing in his byre, harmonizing with rain. Together they lull you, weaving sleep through tired sinews until vision blurs. Just before dreams claim you, a single coal in the hearth pings softly, shedding a final spark that arcs then fades, like a tiny torch passed from today to tomorrow. You smile into the darkness, whispering to no one, "Keep it burning." Midnight comes on padded feet, nudging you awake before you have properly tasted sleep. The hearth holds a single ruby coal, just enough glow to guide bare toes across cool floorboards. You ease the latch, step outside, and let the night swallow you whole. Fog drapes the lane like unspun wool, rooftops hunch under its weight, chimneys exhale the last sighs of supper fires. Ahead, the tiny stone chapel, no bigger than the Reeves pigsty though holier by reputation, rests at the village edge, its squat bellcote outlined against a milky slice of moon. You pad over dew-slick grass, past Bramble's byre where the ox mutters in his sleep, perhaps dreaming of endless hay bundles. Your patched roof peaks above the cottage like a proud quilt square, every reed you wove earlier shining with moisture. The steward's extra hen levy, the sow's one-boot crime spree, the meadow's lightning duet, all tuck themselves behind you as the chapel door appears, iron hinges moist with mist. You lift the latch. Wood creaks a greeting older than any ledger. Inside, lantern stubs paint frail halos on lime-washed walls. A single timber bench slouches under the weight of hymnals hand-copied by Father Anselm's arthritic quill. You kneel on the reed mat, knees grateful for its faint springiness, and let the hush settle like fresh snow. Beeswax fumes from guttered candles mingle with the mineral breath of stone, cool yet oddly comforting. You inhale, then exhale a day's worth of plough dust, hay chaff, alehouse smoke, and whispered fears. Head bowed, you begin your inventory of thanks and petitions, gratitude for hay safe beneath the oak, for the harness seam that spared Bramble's skin, for laughter sturdy enough to prop table legs. Petition for softer steward quills, for hens to lay double yolks, for the Reeves temper to mellow before sunrise. Historians still argue whether midnight chapel visits were acts of pure devotion or subtle rebellion, peasants staking private claims to spiritual agency. But tonight, motive feels irrelevant. The simple act of speaking into candle-lit silence is its own reward. Footsteps echo behind you. Sister, clutching a sprig of rosemary, widow, Ellen pressed into her palm. She settles on the bench, the herb's fresh scent threading the air like a green amen. 2 breaths later, Hugh slips through the door, carrying the liberated boot. He props it beneath the Holy Family fresco, whispering that even saints appreciate a joke. Agnes arrives next, hair damp from fog, laying a nettle leaf on the altar as penance for her earlier language. One by one, neighbours filter in until the chapel feels less like sanctuary and more like collective heartbeat. Father Anselm emerges from the shadows, eyes soft as worn vellum. He raises no lectern, chants no lesson. Instead, he simply opens the stained glass shutter so moonlight pours a silver ribbon across the floor. Each of you steps into it, warming chilly souls on cold light, as if bathing in a river made of guilty. Did you know medieval villagers believed moonbeams seeping through coloured glass carried healing virtues specific to each hue? Blue eased sorrow, red strengthened courage, green promised healthy livestock. Tonight, the shard that lands on your feet is green-tinted. Bramble will approve. Anselm murmurs a psalm in Latin too soft to catch, but the cadence alone unties tight shoulders. When he finishes, silence blooms again, bigger than before, spilling into every crack between flagstones. You cup your hands, shape them around an invisible hope, extra barley germination, a milder winter, the steward's quill snapping mid-soom, and release it upward. The candle flickers as if accepting delivery. Sister passes you the rosemary. You brush its needles, releasing bright oils that cut through wax and stone must. Pressed to your lips, the herb tastes like fields before sunrise, like possibility. You leave it on the windowsill where moonlight can steep it further. Hugh kneels beside the boot, traces a cross in its mud, pledging to return it and maybe a matching mate come dawn. Chuckles flutter, but never break the hush. Fog curls through the open shutter, threading around kneeling forms, weaving congregation and night into one fabric. Somewhere beyond, the church bell's silent tongue rests, but you swear you hear a phantom chime. Perhaps the echo of every prayer ever spoken inside these walls. Time loosens, breath slows, worries lean against the doorframe and snore. At last, Father Anselm raises 2 fingers in gentle dismissal. One by one you stand, joints popping like lazy crickets. No blessing spoken, the night itself feels sacramental. You slip back into fog, chapel door sighing closed, latch kissing iron. Footsteps pad homeward over grass that now glitters with newborn dew. Village cottages lie hushed, chimneys dark. As you near your door, the Reeves Sow ambles by, minus boot, nursing secrets. You salute her. She grunts absolution. Inside, embers still glow, a tiny red planet spinning in the hearth's black universe. You crawl onto your blanket, sensing sister settle near the cradle, hearing Hugh's quiet whistle drift to his own threshold. The night wraps everything in cool wool. Far off, the steward's ledger sleeps, unaware that ink dries slower than hope regenerates. You tuck your hands beneath your cheek, smile at the roof's solid silence, and let the very last thought slide away. Tomorrow waits, but it has to catch you resting first. The village exhales as though the whole earth has finally unclenched its fists. Rain hushes to the gentlest whisper, no longer a drumbeat but a soft brushing of silken threads across the eaves. Inside the cottage, the air is warm and dim, scented faintly with rosemary, beeswax, and the comforting memory of barley stew. You lie still, feeling each breath stretch just a little longer, just a little slower, as if the night itself is teaching your lungs a lullaby. Outside, puddles settle into mirror-smooth pools that quietly collect moonlight, sending specks of silver quivering across the thatch. A late owl hoots, low and steady, sounding less like a warning and more like a promise that the dark hours are guarded. Somewhere in the byre, Bramble shifts, the soft thud of his weight on straw echoing like a distant heartbeat, calm, deliberate, reassuring. The small coal in the hearth winks, then glows again, a steady red eye keeping watch while you drift. Shadows remain soft-edged, refusing to sharpen into chores or worries. They simply fold over one another, layer upon gentle layer, until every corner of the room feels padded. Your muscles, loyal but weary, melt into the blanket, releasing the day's last embers of tension. Fingers that gripped spade, scythe and needle now rest easily, palms warm against the wool. In this slow, silvery hush, thoughts thin to single images. A green moonbeam on chapel stone, the sweet sting of nettle giving way to laughter, a boot wedged beneath a wobbling bench. Each memory drifts past like a lazy boat on a glassy river, and you watch them without needing to steer. Soon, even the river fades, leaving only breath, quiet, even featherlight, and the soft certainty that dawn is many hours away. Let the steward's ledger sleep. Let the crows keep their omens. Tonight, the village and every soul within it rest under a quilt of gentle rain and peaceful dreams.